Welcome to OOO, an out of ordinary podcast where we dig deep into case studies and the nitty gritty of Web3 marketing. You'll find here all the amazing people that are building Web3, so stick to us as we address their marketing secrets and learn how to build amazing products and brands. Hello everyone, I'm Alex, a fellow Web3 marketer and the host on Out of Ordinary podcast. This is episode 47 and I have some super exciting news. If you're new here, welcome. My goal is to make this podcast your go-to place when it comes to answering anything Web3 marketing related. As always, I want to let you know that you can now support the show both on Patreon and Unisub with donations in fiat or crypto. You can donate as little as $5 a month and still have a huge impact. Another super cool thing is that I've partnered up with Pause.media, an on-chain podcast minting platform. What does this mean? I'm minting this episode and you can now become a collector of this episode and of other episodes featuring your favorite speakers or subjects. Follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter for more info on how this works and check out the link in the description of this episode. And if you can't do any of the above, send this episode to a friend, leave a 5-star review or post about it on social media. Every action matters. Now, let me introduce you to my guest. Eugene is a seasoned marketer and brand building expert with over 15 years of experience. Over the past decade, Eugene has worked with both Web2 and Web3, collaborating with industry giants such as Flutter Entertainment, Binance, and Parity Tech to shape the digital landscape. He led teams in delivering scalable CRM programs, played a pivotal role in transforming the user journeys, and contributed significantly to various crucial initiatives such as BD and sales, ambassador, developer relations, and academy programs, amongst many others. Today, we'll dive into the world of CRM, loyalty, and related tools. Hi, Eugene. Welcome to the Out of Ordinary show. How are you today?
Hi, Alexandra. Doing great. How about you?
I have a cold, I guess, again, but apologize for my voice, but hopefully it's gonna be fine. To kind of kick off this episode, I wanted to ask you if you can introduce yourself and tell us a bit about how you got into Web3.
Sure. So the name is Eugene. I've been in the field of marketing for nearly 15 years now. The last 10 years, I focus strictly on the CRM field. So customer relationship management for anybody that might be not familiar with the abbreviation. I've gotten into Web3 and blockchain end of 2017, beginning of 2018, starting pumping my bags on the 2018 downturn, and kind of stuck around all the way. It's now been a couple of years that I joined the Web3 movement professionally and worked with the likes of Binance, and I'm currently working under Parity Technologies, which covers the Polkadot brand and the Kusama brand as well. In terms of getting into it, it was really through friends that I got into it. Everybody has that one friend that got into crypto a bit before you, and then chewed your ears off about it. Prior to kind of getting into crypto space, I was already a bit of a degen, active on the Forex markets. And I do have a background in economics. So for me, it was sort of a nice playing field in the beginning. But then the deeper I went into the rabbit hole, the more potential I saw in the Web3 and the blockchain space. And here I am.
It's very funny because I feel like everybody's is telling me about this friend who introduced themselves to Web3, but it was not my case. I think I kind of wished I had friends like this, let's say. One of the first questions I want to ask you is, how do you think you measure success in Web3? I think it's a very important question right now, especially because we're at the beginning of a bull market, and I think it's kind of important to kind of set the record straight, let's say.
Definitely. Well, look, when it comes to measuring success, it probably starts with setting goals. Every project is different, a different stage. you have a different product. Your product is at a different level of maturity. You might not have a product, as it often is the case in the Web3, and you just have a token, right? So just having all of that in mind, I'm gonna kind of dump a few different scenarios out of my mind here. So the first thing is obviously the recognition of your token project, the followers that you can gain, right? Which hopefully translates somewhat into a token price. But those are very soft the way I see them, right? Everybody can effectively measure their engagement on social and yada yada. So what I think is more relevant, and it might be true for some projects but not true for others, is how many users, or perhaps it's more appropriate to say wallets, are interacting with your blockchain. What's the volume of transactions? How big are those transactions? How often those transactions are made? If you have multiple products, how many of these products are used, and what's the distribution of the usage between the products? So I think that is, generally speaking, a good place to start. Obviously, this is very kind of surface level, but what I want to highlight is that I feel in the Web3 space, people tend to think that it is very, very different from what we have seen in all the hundreds years of marketing. But I don't think that's really the case. So what I feel like is all the things that we are measuring in the Web2 space, those are more or less all applicable in the Web3 space. It's just in turn, instead of tracking activity at the KYC user level, right? You're probably tracking that activity and other details on a wallet level. That's all the difference, mainly.
I like the fact that you brought up the user elements of it, because I think it connects very well with my next question, and is regarding like Web3 data, because I think this is something that's very important, but it's missing, like knowledge wise, but amongst a lot of Web3 marketers and founders as well. So I want to ask you, how do you think you should segment the customer base? What kind of value do you think you should be extracting and looking at? What kind of data do you feel is the most important for a Web3 marketer or / a campaign?
Sure. Again, I'm not 100% convinced that this is strictly for Web3 marketing, because a lot of these things exist in Web2. But let me cover a few. So there are a few popular frameworks which translate into a data structure. So any data structure should start, in my opinion at least, with a framework. And let me hop through a few. So one that is fairly popular in the Web3 space is a CTM framework, which stands for Community, Trust, and Monetization. So this is more common in the Web3 space, where there is a lot more emphasis on the community element and on building the trust element. Although we work in a trustless environment, right? You still need to build that trust with the users so they actually use your DApp and don't consider it to be a scam, right? But what I think is sort of the gold standard for a framework that should drive decisions about your data strategy is a framework called RFM, which stands for Recency, Frequency, and Monetary Value. So let me hold on for a second on that and explain it in a bit more detail. So when somebody interacts with your product, recency is an important metric, because it allows you to understand when the transaction took place and how long has been since the user, let's call it, has been active. And that kind of plays a pivotal role in a lot of data models, where let's say let's give here an example of a B2C product which a user engages with maybe multiple times a week or even a day, right? So let's imagine a product which a user can use on a daily basis multiple times. So what we can take away from that is that in the recency space, we could think of the users in the following fashion: that everybody who was active, or in other words, interacted with your product last month, has been active that month. If they haven't interacted with your product for 30 days or more, that means that they are inactive, right? So that's kind of a little bit of a description for the recency part. Then the frequency part tells us about how often does the user interact on average, right? So how many interactions do you do per session? Or maybe you can spin that slightly different way and say how many interactions do you do per month or per week? And that kind of shows us how engaged the user is and what we can expect from them going forward. And I think that's another pivotal piece of information, because what it allows you to do, it allows you to understand whether the activity of any given user is dropping off or not, right? So you might be active last month, and you're also active this month, but the difference might be that last month you made 100 transactions and this month you made only one. So in both cases, on a month-on-month basis, you are considered to be active in this case, but the frequency is wildly different. And if you would see somebody drop off their frequency consistently from doing 100 transactions per month to doing 2 transactions per month, that probably can sort of inform you and push you towards action. And finally, the third part is the monetary value, where, again, there's a vast difference between somebody making a transaction that is worth $1 and somebody making a transaction that is worth $1 million. And the most sort of common way and most straightforward way to view it is you could segment your users into 3 buckets, let's say, and you can have your low value users, your medium value users, and your high value users. And this can be based on multiple things, such as the value of the wallet, value of the transactions, but sort of in a mature data model, it all comes down to your customer lifetime value, and this is effectively what you want to optimize, and this is what informs you how much you can spend on any given customer as well. So when it comes to data models, I think the RFM framework is super important. I'll throw in another, let's call it also a framework, which is a lifecycle framework. And here, the easiest way to think about it is you might have new users who have just joined you, whatever that means. Then the next step of that user is probably would be called something like an active or a recurring user. So somebody who has been with you for some time and is still active. And then there are sort of 2 schools of thought here. For some businesses, it ends at the churn stage, and they say that, hey, churn customer is anybody who has not been active. But in some cases, there are actually 2 separate stages. One, which is called churn stage, is when we identify that activity drop-off, and then the stage after that is called lapsed. So again, in different businesses, this is approached in a different manner. But what I often see is I see that breakdown at the end between the churn and the lapsed users. And obviously, this is like a top level overview of the framework, but you can also dive deeper into it and think about it in a way that churn exists in 2 stages. So there is a churn from new customers to active customers, which is effectively your drop off at the early life cycle stage. And then there is the drop off from your active stage into lapsed or into the churn stage. So those are two different things. And again, in mature businesses, they are approached in different ways. And these customers are communicated different messages, and the value that's given to them is different as well.
I feel like I'm in a marketing course right now because like nobody has spoken about like any kind of framework. So like really thank you for sharing that with me and the audience as well. Something I wanted to ask you regarding like or based of like what you just said. Do you think these frameworks work in any kind of company or in any mature company? Because it feels like it kind of deals with like bigger level or not bigger like bigger level or like bigger volumes of users.
It definitely should be applied to different businesses in different ways, but it most definitely can be applied to most, if not all, the businesses, and in there all the different kinds of businesses, right? So
at least on a smaller or on a smaller scale, right?
yes. Let's take an example on a smaller level. So you have a app and you have 100 users, right? And you can still apply the lifecycle framework, where the first transaction of the user makes them a new user. You can still track the retention level of your users by tracking how many wallets interacted with your DApp in period X and in period Y. And obviously, you need to do that at a sort of wallet level, but then at an aggregate level to review all the data for your retention, right? And what I talked about earlier in terms of the RFM framework, that is fully applicable as well, as you will have recency, you will have frequency, and you will have the monetary value for the transactions. So technically speaking, as long as you, in the Web3 space, let's say, as long as you have something to which a wallet connects, that's it. That's really all you need to have in order to have these in place. If your product is not at that stage yet, then probably it is not as applicable.
Something else you mentioned there, and I think was quite interesting, was regarding like retention and acquiring users. And I know a lot of companies in the Web3 space have been struggling and are still struggling with that. Why do you think is that? Like, what do you think is like the most important reason, like why companies in Web3 in the Web3 space are struggling with this kind of things?
Yeah. So when it comes to retention, there needs to be some of a connection that the user has with your product, and it needs to be connected, both invested emotionally, invested financially. And there's always a thing that in the Web3 space, you have a choice, right? You can go and participate with product X, or you can go and participate the product with product Y. And generally speaking, it is very easy to move from one place to another place, right? So effectively, there isn't too many barriers for a user. So, and also there is a natural cycle to the market, right? And when we are thinking about retention, we should be thinking about those cycles. So, for example, in a bull market, you would expect the transaction volume and transaction frequency to be higher. In a bear market, you would expect it to be lower, or you should expect it to be lower, right? So perhaps. Sorry. Let me take a step back. There is one thing that I kind of one lesson that I learned about marketing that stuck with me for many years, which is it is hard to sell ice cream when it's winter outside.
I know this one.
So you got to think it in that way. If the frequency and the retention rate gone down, right, you need to think about what situation is the market in, and does this have to do something with the market, or does it have to do something with myself or with the product? So that's one thing to think about. Another thing is, I honestly don't think that too many Web3 projects think about retention. A lot of them are at this point in time focused purely on acquisition, and they are trying to acquire as many customers as possible, and that's totally legit because this is a new industry, and you need to build your customer base.
It's been a pressure to do that as well, from what I can see. At least like in when the market was a bit better, though.
Yes, definitely. So again, I think that this is sort of the lack of emphasis on retention, just to circle back to your question, and also perhaps living in the bear market for the for a good few months there.
Actually, the theory that I have is that a lot of products have, like, a lot of my friends, or like even people that work in Web3 and are kind of switching back to Web2, told me that like Web3 is all scammy. There's actually no value. There's no utility. So I think like many times, I think that's been one of the issues, and it's been like too much speculation maybe. And it hasn't been like very few projects or like products that have been built with the user in mind, with like a sustainable goal, or like long-term vision and so on. So maybe that's why, as you were saying, I think the acquisition was like so important for many of them, because like from a fundraising standpoint, but at the same time for trust, maybe because like you see there are more people, so maybe you go there with the flock, let's say, and you want to invest in that project because it's going to be better. I don't know, but I think, as you said, like not many projects think about retention that much, or as much as they should. And I think that's my theory, at least for now. We'll see if that changes, though.
I think that it's kind of coming around with all of these different platforms that have cropped up in the recent year. That you can call them whatever you want. You can call them questing platforms, gamification platforms, whatnot. But ultimately, what they do is they often drive retention, or they help with onboarding, right? But all of these tools, they were not present, right? And you can do an airdrop and onboard a bunch of new customers, but like, what's the point for them coming back after? They don't really have one, unless your project or product has things for them to engage with. And also, if you think about it, some products that are on the market do not sort of encourage you to go there and be active, right? So if you are investing in a pool, let's say, you don't want to go and add money and withdraw funds from the pool, and add funds to the pool and withdraw funds for the pool. That's just not economically efficient for you.
I think this kind of ties very well with what I'm about to ask you, and is regarding like education in the Web3 space. And I wanted to ask, like, why do you think education is important, or do you think is important for Web3 brands, especially when it comes to building communities?
Education of the users, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So it's definitely super important, right? Users need to understand how to use your platform, why they should be using your platform. But I think that that abstracting actually blockchain and simplifying it for users is probably even more important than education, right? Because it just removes the hurdle. Like, yes, you need to educate users, but first step is to make it as simple as possible, and then educate users on this as simple as possible. Because if your product is complex, educating the users, it's going to be hard, and only the biggest geeks and crypto nerds will actually do it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a bit of an issue there. Like, and I've seen that like many times, because I feel like sometimes projects want to look cool, or want to talk so much about their product, but at the same time, I think like even if they're still native Web3 users, let's say, I think there's still they're missing out on a really big opportunity to onboard other types of people that actually don't know much about Web3, but maybe they would like to know. So.
Education would help with that, but I would argue that a simpler product and simplified user journeys and a better UX would do even a better
For sure. No doubt about it. Do you think setting up an ambassador program would be one of the keys to helping educate the market? Like having people from the community talk about your product, for example?
Yes, definitely. And that's if we think back to the CDM framework, that's where community is important. I feel like community is sort of partially your customer service in the Web3 space, where a lot of those conversations that the customer service would have with the customers is actually done by the community in the Discord or in Telegram channels, right? So you do want to kind of create a group of loyal ambassadors, right, that can spread the message, and you want to educate them on what message to spread and how to spread it, and make them qualified to help the newcomers, right? But I think that's not the only thing that ambassador program can do for a project. It obviously amplifies your social presence, right? Where if you have an engaged ambassador group, they will kind of come in and support you on social. It potentially creates a pool for future employees. Let's call it, right, where I've seen a number of stories where an ambassador turns into a contributor, if not an employee,
The
right?
CMO.
Or the CMO, yes. um, but generally speaking, I find ambassador programs to be super crucial and important. I also know that in a lot of cases, projects are struggling with their ambassador programs, and they are struggling to kind of extract value from it. And obviously, it costs quite a lot to run these. Um, Again, I think that the missing part was, I will call it gamification, right? So I think that this was the missing part in the whole ambassador field. But now with all these tools coming out that support gamification on Web3, I think that ambassador programs will take a huge leap in the next year.
Let's see. I feel like it's a lot of speculation, but not like not necessarily monetary speculation for the upcoming year, but I think also like marketing wise and vision wise. So I'm very very excited to kind of see how that plays out. What are some other elements you think should be taken into consideration in order to set up a successful brand ambassador program in Web3? Because from what I know from you, you've done some of that, right?
Yeah, so I work quite closely on the Polkadot ambassador program. I just touched on it a minute ago or so. I think that gamification is really important, right? Especially with helping ambassadors to onboard and grow and taking them through those early stages of engagement and nurturing. Um, Usually when you think about the ambassador program, what it entails is there are some comms to go out to them, right? So there is like a community that is actively participating in your project. They are likely very active and vocal about it. But with that, probably applying Pareto principle here is viable, right? Where you can think that still out of your ambassador program, if you have 20% of users of ambassadors that actually engage and drive value for you, you are sort of in a good spot. I think that if projects and brands imagine that they can create an ambassador program where a full 100% of the ambassadors bring value to them, that's probably not it. You need to be able to, with as low amount of resources as possible, onboard, nurture, and engage your ambassadors. Then you need to find those diamonds, those 20%, and then you want to enable them, right? So you maybe you promote them to a senior ambassador status if that's something that you have, or like a regional ambassador status, right? So the goal of your ambassador program should be to identify these people and put them in a place to succeed, right? And then they take the ownership of that and they help your ambassador program to grow further.
I've seen many of them gone wrong, at least like bad approaches, let's say. So I think what you just mentioned hopefully should be the key or should help some of the companies out there. Because yeah, of course it's very important, especially when it comes to probably like new acquisition of users and spreading the word and brand awareness and so on, and building trust in the space, which I know it's very, very important in Web3 especially. Um, I also know that you have worked on some successful campaigns and this kind of campaigns as well. Can you maybe give an example of an ambassador program that you've worked on, and what have you seen? Maybe, can you maybe share some details with us about it?
Yeah. So again, I'll probably just, since it's a Web3 podcast, I'll probably stick with the Polkadot Ambassador program. I could have gone into the Web2 world and talk a little bit about that, but I think the Web3 space is more relevant here. So what I think we have within the Polkadot Ambassador program is we have a good group of people who really take the ownership, and they really enjoy communicating with ambassadors and kind of driving that whole activity. So first of all, you definitely need some sort of an internal team to start that whole initiative. I wouldn't even call it a campaign, right? If you call it a campaign, you mean that there is sort of a start and an end to it, and then there's some promotional element to it or whatnot. Whereas an ambassador is a long-term effort. It's a long-term program. You don't want to think about it in terms of a 3 months or 6 months or even a year. You should probably think about it in terms of 1 to 2 to 3 to maybe even 5 years. I know that nobody thinks about 5 years ahead in crypto, not in marketing. In tech, they probably do.
Yeah.
But it's such a fast-moving world that it's hard to think so far ahead. So I think what's important, and again, sorry for kind of emphasizing that word that you used, campaign, but I think the one of the most important things is to think about it as a long-term program. You need to put the business behind it. Business needs to understand what's the value. You need to raise the goals, right? And you need to understand why this ambassador program is there and what are we trying to achieve with it, which can be different things in different cases. But I think that thinking about it as a long-term program is kind of the first step and the first piece of puzzle there.
Fair enough. I kind of agree with you there. But what about like loyalty programs? Because I think like ambassador programs are for like the acquisition side of things, and loyalty programs are for the retention side of things. Like, what do you think of it? And what do you think it can be the impact of using it and of in your community, in your product, and so on?
Yeah. I think the main difference is that the ambassador program creates a vocal group of passionate supporters, right? Whereas a loyalty program engages all of your user base and sort of aims to keep them active, right? And generally speaking, there you might think about it in sort of two different scenarios. Whereas you can have a retention campaign that aims to provide you with a spike of activity, and you can have a loyalty program. This loyalty program is usually like a bigger piece that entails a bit more things that are a part of it. And it should also take into consideration your data framework, right? So think about it. You have a loyalty program, and it's one size fits all, right? And you have a shrimp and a whale situation in terms of your users, right? So you have only two users. One of them is a shrimp. One of them is a whale. If your loyalty program is for, I'm just imagining here a situation where your loyalty program is for every transaction, I'm gonna rebate you $1, right? So that cuts into your cost of transaction. So effectively, for a shrimp, that might be good enough, right? And for a whale, that's not going to move the needle. So therefore, when you think about a loyalty program, you should consider these things as your data segmentation and your user segmentation, and you want to think about how do I engage and provide value to different levels of users. And therefore, what I think should happen long term in loyalty in Web3, we should start make those distinctions, and it's important to do so. When we think about the different values of users, they will want different type of rewards, right? So for your lower value users, you might not even want to give them anything monetary. They might be happy with just a badge or an NFT if you want to take it further, right? Whereas for your high value users, you want to give them something tangible that they would engage with you. And if the users are really, really big, or perhaps you have a situation where one of your users is actually another project, so loyalty in a B2B environment would look completely different, right? In that sense, what we have currently in the space and the things that are driving loyalty are, again, going back to the gamification or question platforms. And effectively, those can be used in two ways, right? So you could build a gamification solely around the onboarding experience, right? And I'll just leave it there. But when you're building a gamification effort around your retention base, you need to think about it in a way of, okay, so I'm launching this this thing on Galaxy or whatnot, whatever platform you choose, right? You're launching this program, and you need to clearly understand what type of user this is for, because, like I said, you will have different values and different types of users. You won't be able to cater to them all with one size fits all. So you need to identify the user segment that you want to reach with your loyalty campaign, and then run it. And again, going back to different values and different engagement types, you probably want to think about it in a way where you either have a loyalty program that covers multiple steps, right? So different segments, or you might have separate loyalty programs, maybe even running through different platforms that are catering to different value users.
Do you maybe have some examples of this kind of campaigns or programs, or like good practices?
Sure. So let's have a think about the monetary value. So again, we need to think about it in a way that this drives the bottom line up, right? We don't want to deplete our budget. So let's say at your lowest value customers, right, or lowest value users, you probably don't want to give them any monetary value because that is not economically viable. So you need to identify the things that are the cheapest for you to give to them, right? So in a Web3 sense, you probably even start in the Web2 world, right, where you have an engagement platform, which is probably some white label, or maybe you build it out yourself. And within that platform, the users has an account, and within that account, you can give them different badges, right, that they can show off to friends. So that is one thing, right? And that's
does that actually. At least, like, that's one of the examples that I know.
That's a good place to start because it costs you almost nothing. It costs you, the money that you put for the platform, but you're likely not engaging only these customers through the platform. But again, these are the users that you barely get any value from, right? So they maybe account for 5% of the value that you extract. Then you go towards your middle segment, and here is where you can start sort of giving out some actual value to these people, and this can be in a form of complete these things, receive an NFT, right? Because now you're going into that slightly more expensive place, but you still probably are very wary about giving them out straight up money. But if you would think about it in the Web2 world, and I can draw a parallel within within an online gambling industry, for example. So within there, you would give out customers, let's say, free bets, right? And that free bet can be of a value of 10 USD. So effectively, what you're doing is you're giving them away some tokens. It can be considered almost like an airdrop, but in the Web2 world, right? But when you go into that high value level, and it can be on both like a B2C and B2B, and again, it depends on types of tools that you have. But there, a percentage of transaction or percentage of your volume usually is sort of a better trick to get value and get loyalty from these users or businesses, right? Because if you give them a set value of which is worth like 10 USD, that's not going to drive anything for them. You can give them 20, 50, right? That doesn't really work. What you want to give them is you want to give them like a 2% rebate on their transactions, which may be paid in your native token, right? And then you have a real incentive for these users to go in and make those transactions. Because if my transaction is worth, again, 1 million, and I get 2% rebate that I get in some token, even if it's like a little bit limited in its usability, that's still a way higher perceived value for me than a set amount of money.
For sure. But I also know like you're a gamer yourself, and I know like the gaming industry especially in Web3, but not only, has given a lot of, or like it's pretty big on like loyalty and retention and this kind of programs. Like, do you or what are some lessons you think can be taken from there and maybe replicated? Do you have anything like this in mind?
Yeah, 100%. I'm definitely quite a big gamer myself. Both in the Web3 world and in a classical gaming community, and also I love board games. So in a sense, that right up my alley. What I see in games is that usually they drive at daily retentions, right? So you are driving towards your daily active users, and you also check how many maybe games these users have played, right? So let me take an actual maybe example here. One of my favorite games probably at the moment in the Web3 space is Gods Unchained. And I'm sort of a big collectible card game nerd, and this is why when I saw it kind of, I dove right into it. What they do there is you are earning Gods tokens for the games that you play on a daily basis. There is a limit, however, right? So the first like 10 games you play, you can earn tokens. Also, you earn tokens based on the amount of tokens you earn. It depends on how many games do you win and how many games do you lose, and also what cards do you have in those decks that you play with, right? So already there is like a bunch of things that you need to consider as a player. So ultimately what it comes down to is I have 10 games to play on a daily basis, right? And if I feel like the value that I'm getting out of it is good enough, I'm going to do it. Now they do this this is like a general loyalty and retention mechanic. However, they do release new extensions, right? So they release a new collection of cards that you can integrate, right? And when that event happens, as a player, you can usually earn some new cards also by playing, right? So during the moments when they are releasing a new expansion set to their card collection, you actually are incentivized even more, because you can go and you can earn the cards that you don't have 100%, right? And I think this is kind of a great example, and I've definitely spent 1 or 2 hours extra in terms of the time that I shouldn't while playing Gods Unchained. I want to highlight another example, which is from Blanco's Block Party, which is actually, it's a fairly common example in non Web3 world as well, where they would release every few months or so. They kind of release a separate set of actions that you need to complete, and they are specific to that, as they call it, season, right? And then you have your daily rewards for your daily activities. Then on top of that, you have your weekly challenges, and then on top of that, you have this element of a season, and you go through each step by step, and you're unlocking new things for each season. However, they also monetize it, and that's usually the case with this type of season approach, where you can earn the daily rewards, you can earn the weekly rewards without buying anything. But if you want to participate in a season, you need to buy a seasonal pass, and therefore the money that you invest, it kind of gets back to you in form of NFTs in that scenario.
I love these examples, but I think one of the most important things maybe is that is creativity, let's say, and everybody should be creative regarding like their loyalty programs and their ambassador programs and like whatever they want to build there, and kind of customize it to like whatever they're doing right now, right there. Because I think like as long as they're creative and but at the same time, like maybe not trying to reinvent the wheel, that might be something interesting to look at.
Well, look, it's actually from gaming world. You could kind of apply it to non-gaming scenarios as well, right? It's just that the actions that users need to take will be different. But ultimately, you want the users, in order to have retention at a good level, and in order to have loyal users, you want to have something for them probably to complete on a daily level, or like something to do on a daily level. You want something for them to do on a weekly level. You want something to do on a long term, right? On a monthly level, even if that thing that they do on a monthly level is, I don't know, check a report or something of their activity. But you kind of need to figure out what are these engagement points and what are these actions that you want users to take on a daily, weekly, monthly time frame. And then you need to figure out ways, how do you incentivize these users to do that without actually spending too much money.
Fair enough. Something else I wanted to ask, like, what excites you moving forward in Web3 or in Web3 marketing, especially?
I think that we are getting to that inflection point, and I kind of mentioned it a few times. I feel like there's a lot more tools now compared to like a year or like 2 years before. We had nothing. In the past year, there's been a ton of platforms that I think have potential. It's nice to see that these things are sort of available and open to multiple networks. I think that they're going to go even broader, because from a perspective of a tool, that kind of opens up a new market for them if they go into a new ecosystem. So I'm looking for these tools to kind of expand the coverage of the ecosystems. Ultimately, if you think about the evolution of the loyalty programs, like from back in the days, right, from like 40, 50 years ago, it all started with standalone period, where the rewards that you earn through loyalty you can use them only within that business that you got them from, right?
Yeah.
And then we went to the next stage, which was the stage where partnerships became prevalent, right? And then you have, so we have these two businesses. If you participate with one business, you can actually get some value in another business. So that was the next step. And And now we're in a place where loyalty programs are generally like, you can think of them as like networks. And here a great example would be the new Visa solution, right? That they have pushed out for loyalty. If you think about it, right, you complete some action, you get your Visa points, and then you have a whole network of partners. They're still partners, but it's like a huge network of Visa partners that you can use these loyalty points to exchange for the goods and services that you want, right? So I would like to see more of that expansion of the tools. I would like to see more marketeers dipping their toes into it, and I really think that some of these platforms will be the winners, and they will drive the retention and adoption both. I also think that maybe this is a bit further down the line. I'm not sure how it will look like in 3 to 5 years, but I think as we get more mature Web3 projects and businesses, what will happen is they will have their own loyalty platforms baked into the product, rather than having to go to a third-party tool that allows you to do it, right? So I'm not sure whether we're going to get there within a year. I think, again, it's more like 3 to 5 years out. So for the next year to 3 years, I think that it is really important to make the use of all of these tools that are coming into market.
I mean, it's not impossible, because I know Smart Token Labs, for example, like they were on my podcast and they talked about it, like, and they build a solution within their platform, because they felt like doing it like through a third party might not be as valuable. People might not interact as well with their product, but it was a lot of work, even if like they haven't used like any kind of like external budget, let's say, or like fiat and stuff. They've used their tokens as an incentive, but I think it was a very smart move. But it also required like quite a lot of resources, like from their side, like development and strategy and marketers and community managers and so on. So maybe, as you said, like maybe some of the companies are not really ready there, and they're not ready yet. But maybe as like their marketing teams grows and grow, and maybe the business itself establishes a bit better, maybe this is something to look at moving forward.
100%, 100%. Again, if you think to Web2 world, that's how it works there. There's barely any white labels, and like usually big businesses have their own big toys. They have a team that supports that toy, and then they have a full flexibility of how they want to use it, how they want to develop it, and then a part of what their loyalty and retention becomes, it is that technical evolution of the tool through which they are delivering the value to the users.
For sure. What about like trends? Like, are you bullish on something this year, at least? Or are you bullish on like this, what it just told me, like, but on a longer term level?
Yeah, so on a longer term, I'm definitely bullish on tools being developed internally. I see a great potential in that, but again, short term, I think that we do have plenty of tools now. I've done so many demos in the past couple of months, and I've seen so many products. A lot of them are definitely good products. The question for the marketeers will be, how do I integrate this with the rest of my tech stack, so that it doesn't take me 50 hours a week to actually process and make use of it? Because if you think about it, if you use a third-party tool, that's kind of, you use a third-party tool, and if you don't get that data and put it somewhere else and process it and make some further decisions based on that, you are not making much progress, right? So you need to take these tools, and I'm sure marketeers will take these tools, they will run with them, they will figure out what tools work best, and then there will be a lot of users behind those, right? And probably, I don't know, I feel weird when I need to go to a different platform to like track my quests, right? It's weird. If I'm completing quests for I don't know, Polkadot ecosystem, I want to do it through the Polkadot website, probably, right? And that's kind of where I would like to go, but I don't think we're getting there. So the next thing I can get excited about is all these new tools that are coming to the market.
What other kind of advice you have for marketers that are trying to transition into Web3, or they're looking to enhance their skills and their strategy, especially right now that a lot of roles are going to be opening. I'm pretty sure about it in 2024.
Yes, I think if you're coming from Web2 world into Web3, first thing you need to do is you need to understand Web3, right? So go out there, go crazy, give yourself a budget, try a bunch of products, get into Discord groups, see what it's like, join some Telegram groups, right? Understand what these people are about, how they communicate, what are the important things. Then maybe pick up a book or two on blockchain, read through that, and understand what that thing is all about, right? So to sum it up, I think you need to spend as much time educating yourself about the world of Web3 as possible. Don't listen to anybody who tells you that marketing in Web3 and Web2 is vastly different. If you're a good marketer in Web2, I am sure you can adjust and become a good marketer in Web3. You just need to understand your audience and what do they live and breathe.
One of the things that I came back home with, like after HCC this summer, was that not many marketers know tools. And it's connected to kind of what you were saying, that like there's so many new tools right now in the market, and I feel like everybody was telling me like, oh my god, Alex, Web3 marketing is so different and so on, and I was like, well, it's so hard to understand Web3 marketing. Of course, like if you don't have a base, like that's a totally different discussion. But if you don't know toolings and like what you can do with them and how you can grow bases and user bases and so on, because I think like as long as you get familiarized with them, you might have a better chance like getting into the system or like understanding the ecosystem, like and what you can do with these tools that to help business, to help the company grow. Because I still feel like it's a lot of pressure of in Web3 on marketers to deliver probably a lot more than what they would have been asked in Web2. So I think kind of that would be a way maybe to kind of stay ahead of the curve. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, there's a lot of new tools coming out. A lot of tools came out in the last year. If you haven't seen the demo of these tools, then what are you doing, right?
Yeah.
You need to do it. You need to do it for sure, right? Because you're going to miss out.
One of the last questions I have for you is like, can you give me an example of a tool or resource or book or podcast or anything you might find useful for marketers to learn from?
In terms of tools, I think that you need to go and have a look at the main tools that have the most hype now, which I would probably call out your Galaxy, your Layer 3, your Zeely. That's probably the things that you want to go and you want to check out. See what other projects are doing there. Think about how that relates to your project and what you could do with the help of these platforms. Then if you're sort of really kind of in a big boy field, you probably want to go and have a look what Visa and Salesforce have, because that's actually talking about what I'm excited about. I'm excited to see Visa and Salesforce come and say, Web3, we accept you, we have a product for you.
But come on, Salesforce already has a Web3 division.
Yes, they have a Web3 division, and they have a Web3 product, right, in place that you can already use. And like, it's mind-boggling, right, that you can get that on Salesforce. And again, Salesforce is kind of an enterprise level tool, so I don't expect a lot of smaller projects using it. But if the size of your project or the ambition is to be really big, go have a look at Salesforce, right? Go have a look at the Visa solution. I'm also super hyped about Shopify, right? And Shopify enabling Web3 gating on their platform. That's another. It's a huge thing, right? If we would have that during the last NFT craze, That'll be strong. But so now we need to wait for the next one.
I actually do have I know a project that is using blockchain for something e-commerce, something like Shopify. I can't exactly explain, but it's similar to what Shopify could do.
Shopify have a product, right?
They do? We didn't know that.
Yeah, they have a gated product where you can build a Shopify store, and then you can let people to connect with their wallet. I don't remember exactly the chains that they support. They definitely support ETH, and there was like another, maybe like Polygon or something. But you connect with a wallet, and for example, there's a bunch of ways how you can use it. But for example, if you have a specific NFT, only then you can mint a T-shirt with that NFT, or only then you can use the shop. That's already a reality, right? It's not science fiction. And that's what I'm saying. There's like a bunch of tools that marketeers don't know. So go ahead, find a list of tools, and then book a demo with all of them. See what they do.
For sure. Before we wrap this up, where can people find you?
I would say that generally on LinkedIn, I would be more active, right? So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, type in Eugene Telnov, and you're going to find me there. Feel free to reach out on Twitter as well. So that would be at @dgencitizen, all one word. Yes, those would be the two main places. Yes, I'm not going to give out my Telegram or anything.
I will add your IDs in the description of this episode. You're kind of blurred out right now, just letting you know towards the end of this episode. But I think it's kind of fine because you've been clear. We could see you clearly throughout all of it. Thank you so much for being on this pod. It's been a pleasure. Awesome talk, and hope to see you soon and debate more about like what's been happening in 2024.
Thank you for having me, Alexandra. Looking forward.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to our Out of Ordinary podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to hear more content like this, then open up the podcast app and click on the follow or subscribe button. It takes less than 5 seconds and is the single best thing you can do to support the show and stay up to date to more marketing strategies that are being used in the Web3 space.